All right, it's time. People have been asking since I'm a veteran a lot about my thoughts on Afghanistan. Um, I honestly don't like talking about it because I think people have politicized it. I think that it's become an issue where, I mean, what do you have to say about a people? I don't even know if they really lost their country or was it regained, because the Taliban used to be in charge of it. Um, but let's go over what I'm going to talk about, what I'm not going to talk about. I am not going to talk about the politics. I don't care. I don't care about the Republican versus Democrat because they both were in charge during the 20 years we were in Afghanistan, and they both sucked at being in charge of Afghanistan while we were in Afghanistan. I am not going to talk about the historical references because after you go back into Afghanistan's history, there's lots of blame to be passed around. The United States has been in charge of it. Russia's been in charge of it. There's been a lot of espionage that's happened in that region. It's been at war for that whole Middle East has been at war for what, 2,000 years, something ridiculous, right? So I'm not. There's lots of blame to go around. Most of the blame is with the people in the Middle East, but there's no end of blame to go around. To talk about where you could place it. What I am going to talk about, I am going to talk about my time there. I'll talk about my thoughts on what has happened over the past little while when it comes to Afghanistan, and how I felt about it while I was there. Okay, so I was deployed to Afghanistan, basically the year of 2009. 10, excuse me. The year of 2010. Of pretty much the whole year. Um, I flew into Kabul. I was at a little place called Almasak. Moved around from there. Did 140 combat missions, give or take, honestly, 80. Mostly give 80 more. That's not all the combat missions. It was more than that. I spent, I was combat arms. So when I was in Afghanistan, I was boots on the ground and fighting. So that's a perspective that you're coming from, is a person who was boots on the ground and fighting. Um, During the time that I was there, we did what we could to help the Afghan people. We would go into a town and ask if the Taliban's been around. Some towns were very pro Taliban. Some towns were very negative towards Taliban. And honestly, 90% of it was how much resources they got from one side or the other. Or I think there was one town that had been blown up 3 times by the Taliban. They weren't big proponents of the Taliban. And then you go to a lot of proxy towns, little outskirt towns, and they were all about the Taliban because either they were threatened into it or they were Taliban. Um, I'm not surprised that it took less than 24 hours for the Taliban to take over at all. I'm not surprised, and the reason why I'm not surprised is because half of what we call the ANA, the Afghan National Army, is Taliban, and the other half don't want to fight. That's kind of the long and short of it. I remember there's a video going around of young men trying to get um, onto a U.S. air aircraft carrier, or excuse me, plane, trying to get out of Afghanistan before the Taliban pulled through. Well, guess what? They were all fighting age men. They don't want to fight. They are not sold on the United States way of living. That's long and short of it. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they really understand it. And the reason why I don't think they understand the U.S. way of living, because it's very difficult to explain it to you as an American, as a first, if you're watching this, you've probably got access to the internet and access to a computer or a smartphone. They, not to say they don't have access to these things, but not in large. This isn't the biggest part of their lives. The country that I was in wasn't concerned with us versus Taliban unless one of us was there at that time. Then they would concern themselves. Most of these towns are concerned with who has dominion over the local river so they have enough water for the winter. They would go to war with the town next to them and fight a war with the town next to them. If you told them they were a part of Afghanistan, a country, they don't know in large what you mean. I remember talking to a local farmer who was also a traveling salesman. Mind you, a traveling salesman. So just keep that in mind. He came up to me and he had this cloth, and in this cloth he's like, "Oh, you've never seen anything like this. Never seen it. I will show you. I will show you." And he starts unwhittling cloth. Turns out there was grapes. He thought grapes didn't grow outside of Afghanistan. He didn't even know that grapes were not indigenous to Afghanistan, that they were imported and then grown there. Like the police were no better than the army. Again, half of them were Taliban, but the fact of the matter is they lived in little forts on top of hills, and like if you got a fight with your neighbor or if two towns went to war, they stayed out of it. They just let y'all. We even stayed out of it. We were told to stay out of it. We weren't allowed to interfere with two towns having a dispute. We could mediate it. We could talk to them. We could try to come to an agreement. But we couldn't stop them from fighting if the decision was made and they wanted to go to war. Like, think about that. They would go to war, one town to the next. And you want these people to have a world view? No. I'm not going to have a world view. They're concerned about making it through the next winter, or making sure their crop is good enough, or hoping that the Americans don't have to go through there and accidentally knock over their house, or the Taliban, while fighting against us, didn't blow up their shit. I mean, if you looked at the top 1,000 concerns of your normal Afghan civilian, we wouldn't be on there. Like, we are obsessed with equality and wanting them to have the same equality. They're still living in mud huts. They don't give a shit about whether or not that woman down the street went to college, or she's smarter than me, or that they're not concerned with that. And truth be told, most of them don't want gay or LGBTQ people in their country. They're just gonna kill them, with or without the Taliban, to be very honest. I mean, that's where it really, the only thing I could think that we were supposed to bring to that place, which is a goddamn hellhole to begin with, it is maybe a sense of equality. They didn't want it. The women there wanted to do women things, and the men there wanted to do men things. I mean, they're not concerned with that. That's not their day-to-day concern. They're not obsessed with the internet. They're trying to survive the next season. So when the Taliban comes through, like, if you went to the majority of the towns in Afghanistan and told them the Taliban, the Americans are gone and the Taliban, or if you told them that there was the Taliban in charge now instead of the United States, For most of your local citizens, not a lot changes. I saw a lady on the television talking about Kabul and saying that she saw more burqas. My time in Afghanistan, I didn't see a woman without a full burqa from head to toe. I don't remember seeing one. I do not remember seeing one female without a full burqa head to toe during the time while, and that was in the peak of it, right? That's been 10 years gone. That was in the peak of the full swing of this. And this is before they even ramped it down, right? This is shit. We weren't even pulled out of Iraq at that point. Like, I mean, I don't know what more to say on that. I don't have any love for that country. Um, you can tell me it's whatever you want to tell me, but their method of living, I don't. I would have hated to live there from beginning to end. I don't like their mindset. I don't like their religion. Um, to be very honest, it seems like most Muslim countries end up in that kind of a state. And I'm not trying to talk bad about the Muslim religion itself. You know, I don't know enough of it to really have a huge opinion on it. I'm just observing when a Muslim country is a Muslim country where they end up, right? And that's all I really want to say on that. And as far as Afghanistan, do I have sympathy for the people that are there that want to live a little bit more like the American way of life? Yeah, absolutely I do. But why didn't you shoot back? And if you did, there wasn't enough of you. It's not as if the Americans didn't go in there and try to show them a life that we consider to be a better way of life. We did. We went in there, we tried to show it to them, and it was rejected in mass by the population. And you can't, once you give a sense of freedom to a people and they give it back away, which is basically what happened, because you're not taking over a whole country in 24 hours unless they're going to, unless you're going to roll over. They gave it away. And that's their decision and the way they lived. A part of being free is allowing a people to make decisions that you don't agree with. As far as if we wanted to bring Afghanistan to a point where they would live in some sort of semblance the way the American people do, we would end up having to go in there and do a mass genocide. And I'm not in favor of that. Not. But when the people that we were hiring to be the ANP, the Afghan National Police, and the people who were raising their hand to become the Afghan National Army, half of them are Taliban. And another half like agreed with what the Taliban stood for. You know, it's not much more else to say. Your army's for it. Your people are either too drawn up into their own lives, or they were in favor of the Taliban to begin with. There really were not enough supporters of the way of life that America brought to the Afghan people in order to sustain it. There's really no way around that. And you can argue about why that is. You can argue about how that came about. I'm not going to argue that. This is just what I see. And if what they want here is to go and destroy that way of life and do it, then, We've been there long enough. Been there 20 years. We did what we could. They need to figure out their own way of life. And they don't. I mean, if you ask me if they had a semblance of what it means to be Afghani, I don't. They've been under so many regimes and foreign powers. I don't think they even have a sense of their own nation. The Taliban has more of a sense of nation than the Afghan people. In that aspect, they're actually doing better than we were. Um, Not to say I'm in favor of the Taliban. There's a lot of things I definitely don't want to see happen, but you can't force a people to want to be free. You cannot beat a fighting spirit into a people. Just can't do it. You cannot beat a fighting spirit into somebody. You can try to teach them. You can motivate them, and you can try to win hearts and minds. That Obama's hearts and minds. I mean, that's what he tried and fired several generals over to try to get done for years. And it just failed. After a fashion. We'll see what the Taliban does. We can go back in there and take over the country if we really want to. But then we're wasting money, resources, and I'm not really in favor of the United States being there to begin with. It's not our business, it's their business. It's their country. They need to run it the way that they see fit. And if that means that they need to go through a period of being under the Taliban for them to realize, I don't like this shit, and then do a rebellion, or if that is just how they want to live in large, then we have to allow them to be a people. Unless you're wanting to go in there and basically just kill anybody who disagrees with you. I'm not in favor of mass genocide. But I don't see another way when it comes to Afghanistan. The people are just too used to war. I've been in so many conflicts that just meld into each other. It's their way of life. I remember one day watching a young woman and her child walk underneath my weapons as I was firing test rounds over their heads nonchalantly. I was firing before they even came over there, and they just walked underneath. They didn't care. They're just used to it. They're just used to war. And it's shitty. It's shitty to get your people to a state of being used to war. It's also a shitty thing about America is we have so many proxy wars going on. We're used to it. Most of you guys watching right now probably got born into a state of war. I can't remember a time in history where the United States wasn't at war with somebody. We just don't have it on our streets. Afghani people have to put up with it on their streets and in their backyards. I have sympathy for that, but they need to fight their own battles. I wish them Godspeed, and I hope they figure out a good way of life for them. That's all I have to say on the subject. Now, this is my first in a line of podcasts. I'll try to do these 1 or 2 a week. I think of any subjects that kind of come to mind. Hopefully a little bit better. I hate editing, so I'm just going to do them in one take. That's all I have. If you did like what you saw, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. If you disagree with something that I had to say, by all means, we can discuss it. If you would like to come on to the podcast and discuss a particular topic with me, let me know. And you and I can discuss that. Also join the Discord. But if you did make it through to this point, thank you for listening, and have a great day.